Maybe imagine Rome as a permanent, ironclad machine, a superpower that marched across the ancient world with effortless precision. The historical reality is far more precarious. For much of its early life, Rome was a fragile settlement that repeatedly teetered on the edge of total collapse. Rome earned its title as the Eternal City through a capacity to absorb world-ending blows and rapidly mutate its very structure to survive the aftermath. In 390 BC, a Celtic tribe known as the Senones delivered a shock that should have ended the Roman story before it truly began, breaching the city's defenses and burning its wooden buildings to the ground. As the invaders entered the Roman Forum, the city's elder senators reportedly sat motionless in their chairs, projecting a level of stoicism so intense that the Gauls initially mistook them for statues. The ensuing looting reduced the early republic to ashes, destroying the city's records and its sense of security in a single afternoon. This destruction forced a hard pivot in Roman policy. They began rebuilding the city entirely in stone and adopted a strategy of aggressive defensive expansion, neutralizing neighbors one by one and then absorbing them as allies or citizens until they controlled the entire peninsula. By 216 BC, Rome faced a tactical genius who specialized in delivering fatal blows. Hannibal Barca led a Carthaginian army over the Alps, bringing war directly to the Roman heartland. At the Battle of Cannae, Hannibal executed a feat of military engineering. This map shows his smaller force swallowing a Roman army double its size. The slaughter was industrialized. Up to 70,000 Romans died in hours, dwarfing the first day of World War I Somme. Rome's response to this erasure defied every ancient military convention. The Senate refused peace terms, instead arming freed slaves and raising entirely new legions to replace those lost in the dust of Cannae. They shifted to a grueling war of attrition, spending 15 years avoiding direct contact with Hannibal while systematically cutting off his supplies and exhausting his manpower. Facing total military erasure forced Rome to evolve into an empire of strategic patience, proving that calculated sacrifice could overcome even the most brilliant tactical defeat. By the 3rd century AD, the primary danger shifted toward the sheer scale of the state, which began collapsing inward under its own weight. 50 years of permanent civil war, 20 different emperors assassinated in succession. The plague of Cyprian killed thousands, while the Roman economy virtually vanished. The territory splintered into 3 competing domains: the Gallic, Palmyrene, and a central Roman core. Emperor Diocletian stabilized the collapse through radical administrative logic, splitting the empire into eastern and western halves, acknowledging a single ruler could no longer manage a state this size. 20th century, modern mechanized warfare leveled many of Europe's historic capitals through systematic aerial bombing. Rome was a primary target, serving as the capital for Benito Mussolini's fascist regime and eventually falling under German military occupation. Despite its military and political importance, Rome escaped the carpet bombing that reduced cities like Berlin and Warsaw to rubble. Allied planners viewed the city's history and the presence of the Vatican as too significant to target. This cultural shield protected the architecture from the same bombs falling elsewhere in Italy. By the 20th century, Rome's security rested on its cultural density. Allied tactical decisions treated its history as a literal asset, effectively turning 2 millennia of heritage into its most resilient defense against modern weaponry. Over 3,000 years, Rome transformed from a stubborn wooden republic into a massive military machine, and finally into a global cultural monument. Rome proves that true endurance is measured by the ability to emerge from disaster in a more resilient form. It became eternal because it was always willing to change.